I'm Kimberly and this is Floral Art Review, where we look at a design of mine, an old competition design of mine, and give it to our AI, Design Eye, to analyse and give me some feedback on the basis of the principles and elements of design so that I can have a look at the design and think about how I might do it differently or how I might change the way I have presented the design for judging. So this week we're looking at a Stamobile. Now, a Stamobile is a defined design style for this particular competition, and so it reflects back on the work of Alexander Calder and kinetic designs. So the three that are important in that grouping are the Stabile, which there is a video for, Stamobile, which is this one, and the Mobile. So the Mobile is quite self-explanatory. We all know what a mobile is. It's something that hangs, that has free moving elements to it. The Stabile, which is the first of these designs, and there is a video, as I said, for that particular one, that is a static design, but it gives the impression of movement. And so this one, the Stamobile, sits in between the two. It is a static design, but it can have moving parts. And so what I've done here for this design is I have used a piece of weathered wood as the base, and because it's got lots of little cracks and crannies in it, I can put things in it that indicate movement. Now, what I have used as the bulk of the plant material is bleached and dried seaweed. So that's what you see as the darker bits, the curled bits. So I've got some pieces that are caught in the weathered wood and some that are at the top of the design. And I've got another piece of weathered wood that is held upright by a stand that's covered with hessian. My idea behind the design was that it would be something that you would see that is in that Stamobile frame of mind. So on the beach or somewhere you might see that there is debris there that sort of moves, but has obviously been affected by movement throughout its life, so the seaweed and the weathered wood. Interspersed with that, I've got some hanging pieces of the dried seaweed as well as craspedia made into little webs that are hanging loosely or are part of the design. As I look at it now, I can see some things that I would most definitely change, but let's see what AI's got to say about this particular design. So first of all, in the analysis, it gave me the basis of what it was going to use for the analysis, which was good because all I said was it's a defined design style that's gone out and gathered some information and discovered what a Stamobile in terms of floral art is before it gives me the feedback. So a Stamobile combines the stability of a stabile with the movement and suspended elements of a mobile, which is what I said. It typically includes a strong grounded structure with elements that either move freely or appear suspended in delicate balance. The success of this design lies in contrast, tension, rhythm, and the illusion of kinetic energy. So I think in terms of that definition, it is a good design. Let's see, though, in terms of the principles and elements of design, which is the basis for the judging of the floral design, what it has got to say in terms of the analysis of those areas. Looking at balance, first of all, visual and physical balance. The heavier grounded base of natural bark supports the visual weight above, giving a good sense of asymmetrical balance. The top structure appears to lean slightly to the right, countered by hanging suspended yellow balls and lighter elements. So in terms of visual and physical balance, it's looking good. The vertical thrust of the central upright piece is visually anchored and makes the design feel stable despite the complex textures and variety. That's probably true. In fact, as I look at it now, I would probably like the angle of that vertical placement to be a little bit more on the diagonal side, so bring it down a little bit more so that the hanging pieces actually came to where the end of the base piece is. To me, that would complete it very nicely. And I am particularly put out by the two dried seed pods that I've got at the top that look like antenna. I really would like to just cut the photo off at the top there. I don't know what I was thinking when I put them there, other than I was probably thinking I needed more height. And that would be a consideration if I had that vertical placement a little bit more diagonal. I would have to think about something that would be indicating height, because the base is so grounded, so strong, so dominant, that I wouldn't want you to be just caught there and not seeing the rest of the design. So movement now. Outstanding feature. The yellow suspended crespedial spheres and light dried materials, which is the seaweed, introduce actual movement and excellent implied movement. This is a key success in the meeting of the Stamobile criteria. The downward flow of hanging elements contrasts beautifully with the upward thrust of the cone-like structure at the top, encouraging the eye to travel dynamically through the design. What it's talking about is those two seed pods at the top, and I don't like them. I don't think it helps the design. Yes, I probably need something that is a little bit higher there, but perhaps I could have gone lighter, a lighter colour in the seaweed, and just stacked that a little bit higher, just in smaller elements, so that it came up to more of a, because the movement is in that seaweed. I really don't want to lose the sense of movement, and I think I have with those very static placements of the seed pods at the top of the design. Line now. Variety of lines. Strong diagonal lines in the wooden elements draw the eye upward and outward. The curved ropes and vines introduce flowing rhythm, softening their harder natural shapes. Vertical lines are dominant, but nicely interrupted by curved and meandering lines that give tension and interest. So it's looking at the line that's created by the seaweed, which is what it thinks is the ropes and the vines, and it is seeing that movement, that implied movement that is in those pieces, gives us the flowing rhythm, and it softens those harder shapes. I probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the seaweed towards the front of the base piece. I've got a little bit tucked in one of the layers, but I think it needs a little bit more to soften that edge a little bit more. Texture. Richly textural. This is a major strength, which, as you know, if you've watched any of the videos, is my area of focus. I really do enjoy having that textural contrast in my designs. The roughness of the bark, softness of the jute and burlap, the fuzzy textures of the seed pods create a compelling tactile experience. Contrasts are well managed and harmonious. Use of similar colour tones, brown, yellow and neutral, helps unify the textures so they don't compete. So that's probably one of the things that you need to learn and experience, I guess, in terms of textural contrasts, is that often we'll go for textural contrasts because there's a colour contrast as well, and you have to really, I find I have to be really disciplined about, am I focusing on the texture or am I focusing on the colour contrast? And I have to look at, or have learned to look at, having a graduation of textures so that it rests the eye. There's places where the eye can rest rather than be hit in the head by all these different competing textures. Space. Effective use of negative space between suspended forms and internal cavities. So that's the layers in that weathered wood, as well as the space in between the hanging things. And this is an area, this negative space, I've been talking with a lot of students lately. This negative space is something that is quite a difficult concept to understand in terms of a floral design. The negative space, the space between your placements, becomes part of the design. So you need to think about using that as part of your design, not to jam in your plant material or jam in the other material that you're going to use and not have any space in between. You know, I think I've said it in other videos, but I had a mentor very early on who said every flower has a face and every face should be seen. So what she was trying to say was that give each piece of plant material that you put into a design its place, and let there be some space around it so the judge can see it, so you can see it, so people enjoying your design can see it. There's breathing room around the key suspended spheres, allowing them to read as important features rather than visual clutter. That's true. I think there needs to be a little bit more graduation in the the placements of those, that they're a little bit too close together in terms of where they're placed in the design for my liking, now that I look at it in hindsight. But at the time, I think I was quite happy with the way it all turned out. Colour. Restrained and earthy palette, ochres, umber, tan, and muted yellow provide harmony. The touch of golden yellow adds lift and brightness, preventing the design from becoming too dull. Excellent choice to support the organic, grounded theme. So what it's saying is that there's harmony in the colour there, and that helps with the design because there's not anything that's jarring or looks out of place or competes for attention away from the rest of it. The brighter yellow lifts what otherwise would be, I agree, a very dull, very dark design. But they're not overpowering. So anything bigger, even if it was as bright as that, would start to compete with the rest of the design. So we've got to have things that flow into the design but still give you little highlight points. So it's a bit like using the highlighter pen. You don't use it as on the whole page, just use it here and there so that what is highlighted pops out of the design, and it's the same with the colour in this particular design. So form. The main form is abstract and sculptural, which suits the style. Use of asymmetry and tension between opposing elements adds drama and intrigue. So I think in my mind, when I looked at it, I think it's quite a dramatic design, and I think that's because of the placement of the seaweed. It's such a different, unusual plant material to have there. It makes you look into the design, and there's so much movement in it and so much variation. It creates that sculptural feel, which I enjoy. I must admit, I'm pretty much a fan of sculptural anything, and so I like to have my designs move towards that sculptural element, and I think that's probably why I like using Australian native plant material as well, because there's always so much movement and differentiation in those particular materials. Dominance. The focal area is established at the junction of the burlap-wrapped upright and the dark crown of curled plant material. This is reinforced by contrasting colour and texture. The hanging yellow spheres support rather than compete with this dominance. And that's very true. I did want that top part to be the focal point because I needed that visual balance between the very heavy base and somewhere else in the design. I didn't want the Crespedius spheres, the hanging part of the design, to be the feature. I wanted that to be just like an added bonus that you saw in the design. I think I'm still a little bit concerned about how far that seaweed comes across the design. I would like it to extend further, and I'd like there to be a repetition of it at the bottom of the design as well. So let's see what works in this design. The beautiful integration of natural materials with sculptural rhythm. Fulfillment of Stamobile criteria through clever use of suspension, balance and movement. Effective unified colour palette with strong textural contrast. Skillful manipulation of space and line to draw attention and guide the eye. So lots of good things in that feedback in terms of what works well in the design. Now let's see what there are in terms of suggestions for improvement of the design. Number one, greater definition in focal point. The visual centre could be enhanced by using slightly more contrasting form or tone, perhaps a polished seed pod or unexpected colour near the eye level focus. So this is talking about obviously the top part of the design where the seaweed is, and I wonder whether I was thinking that it did need something that made it a bit more of a focal point, and that's why I've put those seed pods in. I haven't placed them well, and I think that the polished seed pod, or I'm not keen on the unexpected colour. I think that would detract from the overall unity and harmony in the design. I would go with the polished seed pod or something that was a little bit more sculptural in its form, but have it placed in the top of the design so that it was most definitely the focal point, and then the height variation that I'm a bit concerned about mightn't be as important, but it's the idea was there in terms of the seed pods, but not the implementation in terms of my choice of plant material. So this is a very good suggestion for me to keep in mind. Suspension refinement. One or two of the hanging elements are visually too close to one another. Varying their lengths or grouping them rhythmically would create more dynamic energy. And I think I mentioned that as we went through, is that I was a bit concerned about they're all looking a bit too much at the same level or similar levels. And so, yes, that's most definitely something that I would revisit and change up a little bit better. Top-heavy caution. Top structure, while expressive, appears a bit dense and might risk overwhelming the Stamobile aspect. Slight trimming or negative space within that mass would allow air and light to flow through. And that is a good suggestion, because I want that to be the focal area. I don't need it to be a solid mass. I just need it to be where your eye is drawn to. And that's an interesting thing for us to learn in terms of our designs, is we always think of a focal point being this is this hard bit of colour or mass or grouping of plant material, and that's where our eye is going to be drawn, and that's where that's the hero of the design. It can still be the focal point. It doesn't have to be so dense, and I would most definitely think about that. And I think extending that across a little bit further, as I've said all along, the seaweed, to bring it more in line with the end of the base timber would also help in terms of that not looking too top heavy. It's not saying it's a bad thing. It's just saying think about getting a little bit more air and light through it so that it appears like it's floating. That would add to the Stamobile interpretation, as well as it still remaining that focal point. Number 4, base integration. While the bark base is richly textural, the transition between base and upright could be more refined, perhaps by tapering or embedding more of the vertical elements into the base visually to enhance grounding. And I think that I needed to do that with the seaweed. I think I needed to bring the seaweed all the way through the design and all the way down the length of the base timber, so that it would unify the design. So that's definitely something that I had noticed myself and would do in a second chance of having this design. So the overall impression is a strong and evocative interpretation of a Stamobile, with movement, texture and structure handled very successfully. The sculptural presence and integration of suspended elements show creative thought and excellent material handling. With small refinements, this piece would not only meet but exceed expectations for the defined style category. I'm happy with that as an overall assessment. I do think as we've gone through it that there are things that I would change. I think what adds to this design, what helps me make it a Stamobile, apart from the hanging elements, is choosing plant material that implies movement, so that the seaweed implies movement, whether it evokes a memory for you of when you see that it's seaweed of seaweed and the movement of the sea and seeing the seaweed in the sea coming up on the beach, that sort of thing. But there is movement in the form that it takes. Same with the piece of timber. It's not just a flat piece of timber. It's being weathered. It's got movement in it in terms of it. There's no straight lines in it. So that choice of plant material really does become important when you're looking at some of these designs where there is a requirement for movement or implied movement. Or in the last couple of days, I've been judging at a regional show, and one of the class titles asked for a vertical design. And most of them were quite straightforward vertical designs, but one that was presented was, on first viewing, it was more of a stacking design or a horizontal design. But within that, the design did move upwards. So I had to really think about, in the feedback, how I was going to explain the difference between a vertical design and the implied vertical line that was in that design. So same with this one. It's the implied movement as well as the actual movement that you need to focus on in terms of putting that design together. And with the implied movement, I think the choice of plant material is where you need to focus. So with that, I will leave you to your design journey. If you would like your own designs analysed by AI, you just go to the website and follow the instructions there. Next week we are going to look at mobile design, so you will have the three to compare in terms of the Alexander Calder based design styles. But for now, I'm Kimberly and this is Floral Art Review.